Now, Reverend Jesse MWAI is the senior pastor with Christ is the Answer Ministry, Nairobi, Kenya. He currently serves as the senior pastor of Sitam Valley Road. He is married to Joachim MWAI, and they are parent of a 16-year-old daughter. Reverend Jesse MWAI is an honors graduate of Pan-African Christian University. He holds a master's degree from the Institute for Worship Studies in Jacksonville, Florida, USA. How far have you gone? Apart from pastoring a local church, Reverend Jesse MWAI is a conference speaker, both locally and internationally. He is also a business mentor and leadership developer. He is also passionate about youth development and mentorship and coaching with a standing ovation. BBT 2025. Let us receive on the microphone Reverend Jesse MWAI.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Please be seated. Thank you so much. I want to first and foremost honor the two beautiful ladies. And they're looking beautiful, by the way. You know, Penina and Shiko. Thank you so much for this great honor. And of course, Evangelist Lucy, what an honor it is to be with you. Thank you so much. And of course, it's an honor to have all of you, just being here. And we've already, I think, learned so much just from interacting. And it's a beautiful time. And I just want to also congratulate BBT, I think, for the work that they're doing. Just being able to gather entrepreneurs together, people in business, I think is a great initiative. And I think the first time I encountered these two ladies and they told me their passion, especially for doing this, and I greatly honored them. And one of the things I told them is that they will always have my support, and I wish to continue with that support even as I support that vision that God has laid in their hearts. We're going to turn to the scriptures in just a short while. I'll endeavor not to keep you for too long because I know there's still other things that need to be done. But I think talking about money, I think there's something new that is happening, especially among God's people. When I was growing up, I've practically grown up in the church, myself, and so I've always been in the church, and this is my 22nd year as a pastor. So I have interacted with church at various levels and what have you. But one of the things, especially back in the day, those days, there seemed to be an idea that money was evil. Money was wicked. I don't know whether any of you grew up in that generation where, it's like money, all you needed was just enough to get by. And so poverty in many ways was glorified. And poverty was made to look like it is more spiritual to be poor than it is to be wealthy. And then we seemed, I think, later to move to the other side of the pendulum. So we were on that extreme end where we glorified poverty. Then we kind of crossed over. And now we started this, I'm talking about the church. We started glorifying money. So we came up with prosperity gospel. And we started making the gospel all about money, that you could not hear a sermon if money was not involved. And we started doing all kinds of things in the name of prosperity gospel, and that again in itself, obviously, kind of began to mislead people, because then it meant that if you're a Christian, but maybe you're not making it financially, it meant that you're not spiritual enough. All right? But then I think one of the things we are waking up to is the reality, and that's what maybe also BBT is doing, that it is important for us to disciple ourselves, to disciple our people, to disciple God's people where money is concerned, where business is concerned. Now, I think this confusion is still there, even up to now, when it comes to money, the relationship between money and our spirituality. That confusion is still there. And one of the things I have discovered, especially being in church for a long time, because sometimes we are uneasy, we don't know exactly what to do with money. So sometimes when we are blessed financially, we get confused. And that is why sometimes you find somebody who doesn't have much money, they're in church and they're very committed. Then when they become prosperous, what happens? Some of them disappear from the church because we were never discipled. how do I handle money? What do I do with this newfound prosperity? Now, I really believe that it is important for us to understand that God is a God of prosperity. Are you with me? Poverty is not more spiritual. By the way, you can be poor and very wicked at the same time, isn't it? You can also be very wealthy but very spiritual. So in other words, money that has no bearing on your spirituality. Let's just put it that way. But our God is a God who desires his people to prosper. Let me tell you this, and I'll be honest, that there is no glory when you're not able to pay your rent. I don't think there's any credit to you when your children are staying at home because you can't pay school fees or you can't be able to put food on the table. I don't think that's a glorious thing, isn't it? But I think there's a blessing. It's a wonderful thing when you can be able even not only to pay rent, but be able to build a home, be able to take your children to a good school. I think there's a lot of glory, and I think God glorifies himself even through that. I did not grow up in money. I can tell you that, I grew up I was born and bred here in the city of Nairobi, and I had wonderful parents, of course, who raised us up in the church. My dad at one point was a pastor with PAG, that is Pentecostal Assemblies of God. But then because those days, they used to literally starve pastors. I mean, they didn't pay them much. So because of that, my dad was forced to be a tent-making pastor. So it meant that he stopped pastoring full-time, and instead he was still in the ministry, but now because he had a family to raise, it meant that he had to go and get a job, and so that he could be able to raise a family. Now, I grew up, of course, knowing what struggle is. I know what it means to school fees not to be paid, and you're being embarrassed because you're being sent home for school fees. And today when I think of the amount of money sometimes my father couldn't even raise, I always wonder, it was so little. But he couldn't raise it at that particular time. So I know what it means, to grow up. I didn't inherit anything from my father. All right, I did not inherit anything from my father. But that was my portion in life. So when I of course finished high school, went to college, my greatest desire was to get into business, because I said, Lord, I do not want to raise a family in poverty. I don't want my daily prayer with my children to be, Lord, we need food. I said, seriously, there are bigger things to pray for than just a meal. So I committed myself. I said, Lord, I don't want to raise a family. So I went to Catholic University, and I was doing commerce because I wanted to be a businessman. So I told God, I had a deal with God. I said, listen, I want to be a business person. I want to make money. And I said, I will support the ministry the way you want me to support. But then God had his own plans in my own life. So God called me to the ministry. And I'll tell you, I struggled with the calling to the ministry for a long time. And my biggest struggle? Not because I didn't love God, not because I didn't want to serve him. I struggled because I didn't want to be poor. And those days, a pastor, I don't know, evangelists, what generation you grew up in, but you remember those days, pastors didn't have anything. Isn't it? They really didn't have much of anything. You waited for your washirika when they buy new clothes, the old clothes they pass on to the pastor and his family. I said, I don't want to live like that. Who wants to live like that? And then the rest of the week, from Monday to Friday, when people are working, the pastor is the one who will go to people's houses eating their chicken. I said, no, I don't want, because you couldn't afford your own chicken, So I said, Lord, I don't want to be like that. But this is what God told me that time, and I think that's what won me over to the ministry. And God told me, son, I want you to serve me. And he said, do what I'm calling you to do. And the things that people struggle for and work for a whole lifetime, he says, I will give them to you. I said, Lord, how is that going to be? He said, trust me, my son. And I can testify today, now, 22 years now as a pastor, I have never lacked. God has been faithful. Are you with me? God has been faithful. But because of my deep interest in business, so I am not probably able to get full-time into business. So God gave me a wife who is a businesswoman. So recently, especially the past few years, I have found myself being involved in business, and especially business mentorship. So I speak a lot of times in business gatherings like these ones. I also a lot of times get involved also in other corporate, with corporate organizations and companies. They invite me to come and do maybe wellness programs or what have you. So somehow God has still fulfilled that desire that I had to be involved in business. So which means I'm very comfortable among business people. Although tomorrow I'll be preaching, don't get me wrong, I am still a businessman, but in God's own way. Are you with me? And I'm saying that to tell us, friends, that business is God ordained. Are you with me? It has to be God ordained. So that when you get into business, please don't go and open a butchery because your neighbor opened a butchery and they're doing well. Because that's what sometimes we do. Now, have you ever seen, you go maybe in a certain street and there are maybe 3 or 4 butcheries, but there's one butchery that is doing very well. The others, and you begin wondering what is the problem. Because when God calls you to do something, he will bring the clients himself. But if he has not called you to do it, I tell you, you may even have a big capital, but you're going to struggle. So it's very important to know what is God calling me to. What kind of business? And I enjoyed our sister there when she gave her testimony. She says she cares a lot, right? And she felt that that's where God was leading her. And God has been blessing her in that particular area. I want to go to the scriptures in Genesis chapter 26. Now, I'll just go here and we'll just say a few things, and then after that, we'll be done. Are you ready for this? So I want to speak to us on what I've entitled The Business of Prosperity. The business, by the way, because when you get into business, you're actually getting into the business of prosperity. That's what it's all about. It's not just the business of making money. You can make money, but you're not prosperous. Are you with me? Now, you've been making a lot of noise. So tuongea tafadhali. You can be making millions, but that doesn't mean prosperity. Prosperity is holistic. All right? And we shall see that in just a short while. So, the business of prosperity, God's way. Genesis chapter 26 is a story of a man by the name of Isaac. Of course, the story of Isaac is a long one. But remember, he was a son to Abraham. He was a promised son to Abraham. And now, we are told in verse 12 of Genesis chapter 26, then Isaac sowed in that land and reaped in the same year 100-fold. And the Lord, what does your Bible say? And the Lord blessed him. Now, the man began to prosper and continued prospering until he became very prosperous. Now, he had possessions of flocks and possessions of herds and a great number of servants. So the Philistines envied him. Now, the Philistines had stopped up all the wells which his father's servants had dug in the days of Abraham, his father, and they had filled them with earth. And Abraham said to Isaac, go away from us, for you are much mightier than we. Then Isaac departed from there and pitched his tent in the valley of Gerar and dwelt there. And Isaac dug again the wells of water which they had dug in the days of Abraham his father, for the Philistines had stopped them up after the death of Abraham. He called them by the names which his father had called them. And that story, of course, continues on, how he went about now redigging those wells, and he will come and dig one, and there will be a dispute around it. He will move on to the next one, and so forth and so forth. But my interest is now in this particular portion that I've just read to us, from verse 12 to verse 18. Now, in that portion, for me, I see a picture of what prosperity looks like. Now, the first thing that you notice is, as you begin there in verse 12, is the priority of investing. Business begins with an investment. Now, and this kind of investment is not just material investment, not just financial. It begins with an idea, isn't it? You must invest yourself in an idea. There has to be an idea somewhere. Then you finance that idea. Now, why that is important, I need you to know, is because you can only reap from where you have sowed. Are you with me? Now, remember when I began by saying that there was a time that we glorified poverty. So sometimes you will actually find people, and by the way, this still happens even today. You find somebody who wants to stay in church from Monday to Friday, morning to evening, praying for a breakthrough. I always say that is good. Of course, prayer is important. We need to pray. But after you have prayed, go and invest. Are you with me? After you have prayed, go and do something, because money is not going to fall from heaven. All right? God is not going to lead you to a tree somewhere. You're going to come and pluck out Kenya shillings and dollars there. You must invest. You must apply yourself to something. All right? Because you can only reap where you have sowed. In your business, you can only reap after you have invested. Are you with me? All right? But then the second thing I want you to know, so notice, because Isaac there, we are told he sowed in the land and reaped in the same year 100-fold. He sowed where? Where he was. All right? Now, and that is why we have to be careful. And by the way, listen to me. Be very careful about all these, what are they called, pyramid schemes, or get rich quickly kind of schemes. Let me tell you this. When I was in college, I did some bit of economics. There was microeconomics and macroeconomics. And one of the principles, maybe the only thing I remember from those studies, was that there is such a thing in any given economy that we call abnormal profits. Ever heard of that? In other words, in any economy, like even our own economy here, it can only sustain a certain amount or a certain percentage of return on investment. Isn't it? So it means if you're getting a little bit much more or way much more than what that economy can sustain, it basically means it's either a pyramid scheme or somebody else is suffering while you're making the money. In other words, that kind of profit is not legitimate. Tuko pamoja? In other words, there's a certain reasonable ROI, return on your investment. So as a business entrepreneur, please be very careful about somebody who comes and tells you, oh, just invest 100,000 shillings and by next week you'll get 200,000 shillings. I assure, if it's not wash, it is drug money, but it is not legitimate. And it is not sustainable. All right? Remember, you reap where? Where you have sowed. All right? And especially for the men who are here, please, betting is not business. Please, I beg you, gentlemen who are here. Yes, because men are suffering. People have lost literally even their own savings. You know, because you're betting. There's this famous one, the network, Aviator or something like that. All right? And we are always, that's not business. That's not sowing. Now, I say this, by the way. It is possible, yes, for you to earn, what is the prize money sometimes? 100 million or what? Maybe around that figure, isn't it? Now, it is very possible. I'm not saying it's not impossible. It's very possible for you to get that 100 million. But what are the chances? Okay, remember the law of probability when we were in school. All right? You wondered why you studied the law of probability. This is why. What is the probability that out of the million people who are playing, that it will be you? I mean, what is the probability? Yes, it may be, but maybe your chance is 1 in a million. All right? Why don't you take that 100,000 shillings and invest in a legitimate business? Are you with me? Isaac sowed, but he reaped from the same land that he had sowed. But then the second thing I want you to notice is the divine unction to prosper. God blesses the work of our hands. Notice what it says there, that the Lord blessed him. Are you with me? You know, God is not against your prosperity. If anything, God wants us to prosper. That's what I have actually come to learn. He delights when he blesses the work of your hands. Just lift up your hands to him. Just lift up your hand. And just make that prayer. Lord, bless the work of my hands. Bless the work of my hands. That these hands will be able to bring forth prosperity. Are you with me? It is possible. Listen, if Muslims can prosper, how much more God's people? If Hindus can prosper, how much more we who are children of the covenant, we ought to also be prospering. And our God is a God of, when you study the patriarchs, especially in the Old Testament, from Abraham, these were people who are blessed. You remember Abraham? When he was called, he was a man of great wealth. right? And God desires for us to prosper. So when God drops that idea in your heart and gives you that spirit of being an entrepreneur, it's only a sign that he desires to prosper you. And that is why, like what Penina was saying, the importance of you seeking the kingdom, the importance of you immersing your business in prayer and fasting. Are you with me? Don't be embarrassed about calling those who work with you and say, we must begin with God. We must begin in the place of prayer. Like you mentioned, you go to a Hindu business. They're not ashamed to have their little gods over there. They're not ashamed at all. I mean, you go to Isli on Friday when they go to their mosque. They're not afraid to shut everything down. It does. By the way, when time for prayer comes, they don't care whether you have a $1 billion tender. You have to wait. One time I was flying and we got to Egypt and we had a short layover. And when we arrived in Egypt, it was about the time for prayer for Muslims. The whole nobody could serve us. The whole airport had shut down. So in other words, we don't care whether you'll miss your flight. It's our time for prayer. You wait. That's how those guys take it seriously. Right? How much more we children of light? Right? We need to stand for our faith in our places of work because God blesses the work of our hands. But then also notice the third thing is that now, and this is where now it begins to get interesting. Now we are told there that Isaac, verse 13, the man began. Say began. The man began, Isaac began to prosper. Now, the first thing I want you to notice this, that remember, we are told there that he reaped when? In the same year, how much? Now, you must agree with him, that was a good return on investment. 100-fold, isn't it? That was a good return on investment, isn't it? But at that particular stage in the first year, what we are told is that he began to prosper. Now, let me tell you this about something about money, and I'm sure you know this. Now, money is good. Anybody love money here? I know you're afraid of saying that because evangelist is here, But I am yet to meet somebody who doesn't like money. All right? But if you don't like money, it's okay. Just give it to some of us who like it. All right? We'll keep it. We'll make good use of it. Money, and especially when it comes to business, and this is how it works sometimes. You maybe make an investment. Suddenly, the return, at least for that particular transaction, maybe it's a tender you got or something. All right? Because remember, God is blessing the work of our hands. Suddenly, you are touching money that you have never touched. All right? Huge amounts. Maybe even in all your generations of your family, nobody has ever touched that kind of money before. Let me tell you, if you're not careful, what happens? You get excited. Suddenly, that car you've always wanted, you want to get it. Isn't it? Suddenly, you want to do things that you were not able to do. What you forget is that whereas, yes, maybe that deal went well and maybe suddenly things are happening, is that you have just begun. Are you with me? In other words, you have begun to, you are not yet prosperous. Because I want you to notice there's a progression here. All right? So which means that from the word go, you must discipline your appetites. You must discipline yourself. And say, yes, suddenly I have 10 million in my account. All right? But where I am, I have just begun. So I'm not going to run and suddenly I change even my house. Now I was paying 10,000 shillings. Now I'm paying 100,000 shillings. All right? Or I used to go for holiday maybe in Nakuru. Now I want to go to Dubai. You're just beginning. And I'll tell you why that is important. Because there are people who have started business. And I know some of them. In fact, I remember one friend of mine. They start and suddenly God blesses them. Then they start doing big things. Within a short time, they're back to zero. And they're struggling. Are you with me? I remember one guy, this brilliant young man, and the guy had just started, and God had really blessed this young man. Suddenly, he built a house for his parents. I mean, effortlessly. Within about a year or two, and then he invited me to go and dedicate a restaurant that he had just opened. But then I can tell you, within a short while, one day he sends me a text, Pastor, can you lend me 30,000 shillings? Are you with me? Because he confused starting with being. And I'll show you that in just a short while. So the fourth thing is this. So notice the first thing, the man began to prosper. But then the second thing is he continued to prosper. He continued prospering. In other words, prosperity, you have to create a rhythm of prosperity. So guess what? So after the hundredfold harvest that he got within that first year, you must plow it back. Are you with me? It's not your money. Tell your neighbor, it's not your money. Oh. It's not your money. So what do? You're trying to create a rhythm of prosperity. So don't get excited yet. All right? Yes, thank God. But don't get excited yet. You must create a rhythm of prosperity. That's what he did. So he continued. In other words, he continued. So whatever he did in the first year, he did in the second year. All right? I am sure in the second year he also reaped probably maybe even 200-fold. Right? Maybe continued also in the third. So you have to create a certain rhythm of, because business, as you know, is cyclic. Business is cyclic, not linear. Cyclic basically means you sow, and then what happens? You reap, and then what happens? You sow again. All right? But for you to keep growing, it means that I have to sow more than I sowed last time. So whatever I get, I must sow most of it back. So you create a certain rhythm and a certain a cycle of prosperity. So it's not linear. It's not just, business is not, you're not a businessman just because you got one business deal and you got some good money out of it. That's not business. All right? Is this making sense? But I want you to notice number 5 is this. So we are told, and I love the scriptures. So he began to prosper, verse 13. He continued prospering until he became. So you begin, continue, until you become. Now, we are not told how long that took. I assure you it was not 1 year. Definitely not 2 years. Could have taken a bit longer than we even think. But because he created a cycle, a rhythm of prosperity, so now he became prosperous. Now, that means that business growth demands sweat and patience. Somebody talked about patience here. It demands a lot of sweat, by the way. It demands a lot of patience. You have to be patient. They say, by the way, statistically speaking, that within the first 3 years, 50% of new startups usually collapse within the first 3 years. 50%. They don't go beyond. And the problem is not so much that maybe somebody doesn't have the problem is not that it was a bad business idea. Sometimes it's not because you didn't have the capital. Sometimes it's because you short-circuited the process. That's what sometimes happens. You did not have the discipline. You did not create the rhythm of prosperity. So you short-circuited your own prosperity. And then within the first 3 years, your business is no more. Now, so he became prosperous. Now, I want you to notice something. So, how do we know he became prosperous? Can I show you the signs of prosperity? Right there in verse 14. Now, he had possessions of flocks and possessions of herds and a great number of stuff. The sign that now you have become prosperous is when you own some things. You have to own some assets. Are you with me? All right? So that's a sign of prosperity. All right? So you own something, you own your investment, you own something, a certain asset, such that it is earning money for you. You don't even have to show up. You can actually just go home and sleep, but you're sure it will bring something. That's when now you know you have become prosperous. Have you ever noticed, by the way, I don't know whether you've ever noticed that extremely wealthy people, now I'm not talking about these people who steal money, I'm not talking about entrepreneurs and those kind of people, I'm talking about people who understand what prosperity is that when they wake up in the morning, they do their business very quickly, then you know where they spend, some of them spend the rest of their day? Playing golf. All right? If you want to catch them, you have to call them on the phone. The guy is on the golf course. Why? Because he owns. Imagine if you owned this hotel. How many of you would like to own this kind of establishment? All right? Imagine if you owned. All right? It means that now your money is actually working for you. All right? In fact, somebody has, the other time I listened to somebody and they were giving the difference between being self-employed and being a businessman. They said, if you still have to show up every day in that business, you're still self-employed. But if you don't have to show up anymore, now you're a director. He said, now you're a businessman. Now we are talking business. So you always have to aim at not just being self-employed, but being in that level where now other people are doing the work for you. But I want you to also notice the other thing, apart from owning assets, the man had servants. So in other words, he hired people. There were people who are benefiting from his business. That's a sign of prosperity. All right? And I liked what you were saying. That sometimes also, especially for us as Christians, on Sunday we are there worshiping the Lord, but then on Monday we are there mistreating our employees, or not even paying them a fair wage. But God's people, we need to learn also to take care of other people so that my business is not just benefiting me, that there's somebody whose family is actually growing up, somebody is able to raise their family because of my business. Now, when you get there, now you know you are in business. Now you're prosperous. Moving on. You also have to be careful now, because notice, we're in the midst of all that very good news there. But then verse 15, notice what we are told. That now the Philistines, actually even before verse 15, the last sentence of verse 14. So the Philistines did what? Envied him. Now the Philistines had stopped up all the wells which his father's servants had dug. Let me tell you something. Prosperity will always attract opposition. There will always be enemies of prosperity. There will always be people who will envy what God is doing through you. Can I shock you? Some of them will be your relatives. I know you don't want me to go there, but it is the truth. By the way, learn to separate your business from family. Family doesn't know business, by the way. Business doesn't know family. You have to separate the two. All right? So that your family members, even though, of course, you are their brother, you are their uncle, you are the father, even though you have prospered, that they don't think that they have a right to come in there and do whatever they want, pick whatever they want. You're very quiet here. They don't want to hear that. Because I know we are very close to our families, isn't it? Let me tell you, the moment you... In fact, let me also put it this way. All right? Business demands professionalism. Don't hire somebody in your business just because they're your brother. Or your first cousin. Or because your father, before he died, he told you to take care of that fellow. Hire them if they can do the job. So if you're looking for an accountant, your priority should not be your brother. Your priority should be competence. Are you competent? Because if you don't do that, listen, you will collapse your business. Businesses have collapsed in the hands of family members. Because remember, a business entity is even in law, is like it's a person on its own. All right? There's certain professionalism, there's certain technical inputs that business will need. All right? So ensure that you're hiring, you're getting the right people into that business. And let everybody know that this is a business. So my brother has no right to come in here and do whatever he wants to do. He just goes to the cash register and picks whatever he wants. No, because it's my sister and no. The moment you do that, I promise you, you will bankrupt yourself. But also understand this. There will always be people who will be envious of what you're doing. I want to bring this to a close in just a short while. Now, I want you to notice something. So after we are told all that, then now we are told in verse 15 about what the Philistines, remember the Philistines were enemies of God's people. Now, these guys had done some things. They had stopped up all the wells which Abraham had actually dug. All right? So now, because Isaac is now prosperous, it means that he has servants, isn't it? It means he has the financial muscle. So you know what he started doing in verse 17? He says that Isaac departed from there and pitched his tent in the valley of Gerar and dwelt there. Then verse 18, Isaac did what? Dug again the wells of water which they had dug in the days of Abraham his father. Notice, he gets his servants and he begins to dig again the wells that his father had dug. Now, those wells were not for the benefit of Isaac and his family. Those wells were for the benefit of the rest of the community. Are you with me? All right? So in other words, what Isaac did, now that I have prospered, this prosperity, yes, I am enjoying it, but how can I also be a blessing because I am blessed? He didn't have to do this. God didn't even ask him to do this. But he himself just felt, no, let me dig the wells. And it was not one well. And in that culture, please understand, a well is, of course, where everybody will come and get water. Actually, cities and towns will be built around wells. All right? So which means wells were very central to the community and to the life of the community. Now, he began to redig those wells. So for the betterment of the other people. Listen, and I think this is where sometimes we miss it, especially as God's people. God will bless you, but he blesses you so that apart from you enjoying that prosperity, that you may also be a blessing to other people. Are you hearing what I'm saying? All right? So don't be tight-fisted. Don't be stingy. If he has blessed you, please find other people who can benefit from that blessing. Tuko pamoja? I said tuko pamoja. It's good, yes, December. When December comes, take your family for holiday to Dubai. That's good. Take them to the best schools because you've prospered. But also ask God, Lord, how else can I be a blessing to other people? You have been good to me. All right? Not because I deserved it, but because of you have blessed the work of my hands. How can I better the life of somebody else? Listen, there are children who can't pay school fees. Can you consider paying for somebody's school fees? All right? Sometimes even in our churches we have projects. All right? Can you consider? By the way, when you look at the Muslims are very good at supporting Islamic agendas. Some of the big mosques that you find here, by the way, around, they tell us that sometimes they are financed not by many people. Sometimes just a handful of people. But because they love their faith, they will just come and say, you know what, we want to build. They will buy the land themselves, and they will say, I want a mosque here. Here is the money. And they will build a mosque. How much more God's people? How much more? There's so much for us to do in this world. Isaac gives us a good example. This is how prosperity looks like. And this is how you're supposed to be to use your prosperity. So make sure that your prosperity is a blessing not only to yourself and to your family. And one of the things I've learned is this. God is no man's debtor. God loves generous people. Generous people will never lack. Let me tell you this, and this is true. You will never be so generous until you give your way into poverty. That will never happen. But I promise you, you can hold back. In fact, that's what even the book of Proverbs says. When you hold back, you invite poverty. Somehow when you show me people who are generous, let me tell you, the more they give, the more they receive. I promise you, it just so happens. It's a principle, it's a divine principle that God uses. The more you give, the more you receive. The more God opens up the windows of heaven and pours. Why? Because he can trust you. He says, my daughter, my servant over there, I can trust. It doesn't matter how much I give. I know this guy will be a blessing to the nation. But come on, kushikilia tu, you know, and you know, especially for us from Central Kenya, unajua tunapenda maplot. I mean, so tuna plot twingi hata tuna maana. Unrelated, 250 by 100. Jamaa kona plot kama 100. Zingine ziko Joska, sijui Kamulu, sijui wapi. They are all over. They are all scattered. Zingine, you have no idea even where they are. Hizo vitu zote ni za nini? All right? Know when to stop. Tell your neighbor, know when to stop. Know when to stop. All right? So that you can be a blessing. In fact, sometimes, unfortunately, evangelists, that sometimes we are so stingy. This guy has 100 plots all over town, and the guy can't even take his family for holiday in Mombasa. Because how much it will cost? Hey, gafroti me, maguta. Hey, where? That's how we are. So me, I normally tell people, listen, who's a plot? Go to Dubai, and wonder what wanaonaga nini Dubai. Seriously. How can you go to heaven and you have never even taken a plane? What is wrong with you? You know there are no planes in heaven. You will not go poor. Take your children. Let your children go and see some of these places that we are talking about. And I normally say this, listen, what do I know? But listen, Moranga is not a holiday destination. Please. I'm not, but no, by the listen, I have nothing against Moranga. My mother came from there. But I'm saying, Moranga ni kwa mbuzi, na mangon, you know, if you are kashamba, hiyo ni sawa. Lakini if I want to really relax, ndapeleka watoto Moranga, unasema tumapeleka holiday. Na kumbe wameenda kufanya kazi kwa shamba. That's not holiday. Angalia hiyo line, kuna kitu hapo. Are you with me? Let me tell you this, people. Listen to me. Listen to me. As the Lord prospers you, enjoy a bit. It's not a sin. Yeah. Enjoy them. Get to know how people feel when they go to Malaysia. Go and eat strange food. You will not die. Salmon. Kwanza watu wa nyoba unajua hizo vitu wakulangi. Unapatia samaki. Mimi unasikia vile nanuka, you know? Unataka tu mashakura. Are you with me? That's prosperity. Enjoy this world. Enjoy the things of this world. So that when one day now God is calling you home, you can look back and say, hey, enjoy. Lord, now you can take me home. Uku, there's nothing left. Uku enjoy. Let me tell you this also, as I come to the last point. Let me also say this to us. I know, of course, the Bible says that we're supposed to leave an inheritance for not just our children, but our children's children. It basically, now, most of us grew up in poverty, isn't it? But it is a good thing, it's a blessed thing that our children don't have to struggle the way we struggled. All right? In fact, if anything, our children should have a better start than where we started, isn't it? Now, the best thing we can do for our children, of course, apart from giving them a good, strong Christian heritage, because they will need that, but also give them the best education possible. Pass on the values that you learned to your children. Give them a work ethic as much as possible. Tuko pamoja? All right? But listen. Listen, are you listening to me? I know some of you may not agree with this. Now, I know some of the excuses that we use is that, nimenunua tu plot kwa sababu ya watoto wangu. Or I am doing najinyima kwa sababu so that I can leave an inheritance. Now, let me tell you this. One of the things, maybe let me use my own example. Me, I said together with my wife, I have my daughter. I said, me, I'll enjoy life. All right? I will give my daughter the best education, whatever she needs. If she wants to go and do a master's, we will do our best. All right? But we will enjoy life with my wife. Ile tabaki. After enjoying, ile tabaki, that's what I'll pass on. Are you with me? Lakini sitajinyima nimejinyima. Let me tell you something, by the way. Some of you, God will bless you. Maybe your children will go abroad because you'll be able to afford it. You'll send them to America, to Australia for school and what have you. There is no guarantee they will come back here. They will just come back to see you kukutembelea tu. But there's no guarantee they will have any use for that land that you have in Kamulu. Are you with me? There is no ati nitoke America, Washington DC nikuje niishi hapa Joska. They will not. Believe me. All right? So which means I have to be smart. How do I leave an inheritance for them that makes sense for them? Especially this Gen Z generation and Gen Alphas. They are a very different breed of people. In my day, if my father left me a plot of land, I would be very happy. But in their day, sometimes you know what they're asking the parents these days? Sasa hii, unataka nifanye nini now? You get? They have no value for those kind of things. So you know what you do? Uza. Take your wife for holiday. I'm serious, isn't it? Because once you have invested in them, you have given them a heritage of faith. You have taken them to the best schools. They can also make their own money. Isn't it? Give them the opportunity to also labor, to also work hard, because if daddy can make it, surely I can also make it. Isn't? I'm not saying we don't leave them with anything. Yes, leave them with something. Lakini usijinyime. Enjoy life. Wamekataa hiyo injili wamekataa hawa. Haya ni sawa mimi nda enjoy. Let me finish by saying this, and this is just a tip as I finish here. And I think we talked about this the last time that I was here also. Just talking about in any business to make sense, you need clients, you need customers, isn't it? Any business. Let me just, 3 things that I just want to point out to us, words of wisdom. The first thing is this. The client or the customer is king. K-I-N-G. The client or the customer to that business, he is king or she is king. That is, what I mean is that the customers, by the way, in this day, the customers today demand to give input in the products and the services you're actually offering. When I was growing up, back in the day, like for example, when it came to groceries, everything came from East African industries. Anybody remember that? So we all use mostly very similar products. Today, branding has really opened up. But more than that, today, the client or the customer demands to have an input in the products that they are buying. Am I right? That is why we have customer surveys and we want to know what do you want. Whether it is services and whatever, what are you looking for? Because that's what they demand. So always remember this as you begin business. You don't force products and services down people's throats. You must, customer is king. Let him speak into the service or the product that you are offering. And that is why I normally tell business people this, that arrogance has no place in a successful business. Arrogance. If you become arrogant, I'm telling you, you will not make it as a business person. Arrogance basically means I don't care what the customer thinks. Arrogance basically means that, this is no equal to. You know, have you ever gone to a business or dealt with a business person and they treated you very badly? Anybody ever? Or you buy something, you buy a product, and the product is substandard, it is not working, but they refuse to give you back your money. That is arrogance. That is business arrogance. It's like, because business arrogance basically means, you're just one customer. Kwani, you know what, I'm not rushiana mikono. Let me tell you, the moment you go down that direction, that business has no future. I promise you. Always remember this, customer is king. One time I was in some very beautiful establishment. It's a big restaurant somewhere out of town. And so I asked for a soft drink. So when they brought the soft drink, it was flat, right? Totally flat. So I told the waiter, this thing is flat. I can't have it. The waiter suddenly became very fearful because they're not empowered in that establishment. So he goes back, goes and talks to his manager, the restaurant manager. Then the manager comes walking to my table, and then I'm amefunika the whatever, the top of the bottle, and then he starts saying, no, this thing is not flat. I looked at him saying, this is bad business. Are you with me? You never argue with your customer. I said, this guy has no idea. You don't argue. By the way, even if the customer is wrong, you still respect them. And sometimes you'll get obnoxious customers. But remember, customer is king. Because number 2, a happy customer or a happy client is your greatest asset. By the way, your greatest asset is not your product, as important as that is, not the service you're offering. Your greatest asset for any business is a very happy, satisfied customer. In other words, business is about making the customer happy. You make me happy, you know what happens? If you make me happy, number 1, I will probably come back. Number 2, I will probably give you more business. Number 3, I will advertise. I will tell everybody else, that place or that person is the best. And the most effective form of advertising is actually a happy customer. You can actually have big billboards on the road everywhere. But the best form of advertising is that one customer who is very happy with you. I try as much as possible sometimes to support small businesses, people who are selling their products maybe online, and that's a big business these days. But sometimes I get disappointed. Because sometimes I'm left very unhappy, all right? Not with the product, but with the service that I actually received, all right? Now, one time I was in the UK, and I went to this departmental store and I bought one tie, just one tie. I don't know whether I give this example the last time I was here. One tie. So I go to pay for this tie. It was not even expensive, and then the cashier, goes on now to tell me that as you buy this tie. It has a warranty. In case you don't like it, you can return it within 14 days for a full cash refund. And I'm wondering, tie. Who does that? You know, because I come from a culture where goods once sold. In other words, I can actually take that tie, wear it, tomorrow. Then after 2 days, return, they say, "Ai tie nilivalia lakini ilininyonga so." And they will actually give me my money. In other words, for them, what I learned that day was this. For them, customer is king. They will do everything to make you happy. One time I was buying something. I was in the US and I was buying something on Amazon. And of course, Amazon. And they delayed in delivering. Do you know what they did? They removed the shipping fee and said, we take responsibility. And by the way, do you know for how long they delayed? Within a few hours. A few hours. By the way, I didn't even notice they had delayed. I didn't notice. I didn't know. I said, yeah. But because they care about my business, they said, because we delayed, and they even sent you a very polite note, we apologize. Because of that, we will not charge you for shipping. Because customer is king. In other words, not every transaction ends up in a profit. Did you hear me? Don't always think that every transaction will end up with a profit. What your aim should be, beyond the profit, how can I retain you? So today I may not make anything from you, but surely tomorrow you will come back. And you will bring your friends together with you. Are you with me? Don't be afraid. Make your customers happy. If they're not happy with your product, give them their money back. All right? As opposed to that one of forcing me to choose something else. I really dislike that, by the way. You go to a place, you pay for something, then, maybe whatever was there, and you had already paid, then they're now telling you, I'm thinking, no. That 1,000 shillings was for this particular, if you don't have it, give me my money, let me go and find it elsewhere, isn't it? Thirdly, finally, And now, the first one was a happy customer is your greatest asset. An unhappy customer or a client is your greatest risk. Did you hear that? Because bad reviews usually go viral. More than even good reviews. People love bad news. All right? You don't want bad reviews for your business. Listen. All right? An unhappy customer, let me tell you, one unhappy customer can bring you down. Today, in the West, especially where litigation is so key and so central to that society, businesses have been sued out of business by one unhappy customer. Somebody just goes to court because maybe you treated them in a certain way, and they sue you, and the judge finds in their favor, and you shut down your business because of bad review. An unhappy customer is a danger. You don't want an unhappy customer. Do everything to ensure that your customers, your clients are happy. Tuko pamoja. I wish you all God's blessing as you continue in the journey. I know all of you are probably in different stages of business, entrepreneurship, but at whatever stage you are, my prayer for all of us is that God will prosper you. You will become prosperous in Jesus' name. Who knows? Maybe in this room God is raising billionaires, isn't it? Who knows? Maybe the next billionaire in Kenya maybe is you. Oh, Najidarao. Maybe how do you know? By the way, who knows? Maybe you're seated next to a billionaire right now. All right? Who knows, isn't it? The people who become billionaires, it's not because they are special from heaven. They are ordinary people like you and I. How much more we who are children of light? God desires to bless us and to cause us to prosper. God bless you. Thank you so much.
Great. All right, let's put our hands together again for Rev Jesse for the wonderful insights. So, Rev Jesse, I happen to come from Muranga. And, anytime I tell people I'm going for holiday, that's normally my direction, eh? So now I think I need to start changing my directions, to some place, maybe hapo Kijabe, naingia Kinangop kidogo, Nanyuki, before I start going to Egypt and Dubai, sindio? Sawa sawa. So if you want to encourage me to change my holiday destination from Muranga to Dubai, please clap for me. Asante. And because I know I'm not alone, please clap for yourself for changing your destination from your country, eh? Sawa sawa. So, Rev Jesse is very gracious to us, and he wants to answer our questions. If you have any burning question, I think we can take 2. Then the rest we can always ask on the QR code that is on your table. Just confirm to me that you have a paper like this. You can see a paper like this with a QR code to scan. Oh, you can't see one like this. Which one do you see? What is written at the top? Okay. So, we have this question QR code, which we shall be using. We'll have copies brought to your table, okay? So the idea is you can ask any question that you have, and we'll be happy to respond to that question. Okay? Then, if you have a burning question, let me see by a show of hands. If you have a question that you'd like Rev Jesse to answer now, and I have one myself. There's a question? Okay, so Rev Jesse, this one was sent by my business community in town, and they asked me to come and ask you just one question. Is it right or wrong for me as a Christian to own a pub?
Well, by the way, we get that question all the time. So for example, leave alone even just a pub. For example, if you own a hotel like this, beautiful hotel like this, but inside there's a pub. You're a Christian? Is it okay? Is it wrong? Usually, it's a difficult question to answer, and different people answer it, very differently. So it's also not possible to be dogmatic about it. This is what I normally say, all right? And I know this may sound a bit liberal, but this is what I normally say. I think if in your conscience you're not comfortable with that, all right, then don't do it. It is possible for you to have an establishment that is alcohol free. If you go, for example, if you go to Dubai Mall, those of you who have been to Dubai Mall, by the way, huge, one of the biggest malls in the world. You will not find a pub there, no alcohol. It doesn't matter what restaurant is there. They don't serve alcohol in the whole mall because of their Muslim faith. All right? If they can do it, we can do it too. Are you with me? All right? If they can do it, we can actually also do it. So again, also, and that's why I'm saying I don't want to be dogmatic about it, because anything that I would feel would violate my principles as a Christian, I don't want to support anything that will violate those principles. Are you with me? So if I know, for example, that alcohol destroys people's lives, it destroys people's homes, will I be happy? Imagine I'm born again, I love the Lord, I'm going to heaven, blah, blah, blah. But then when I come to my place of work, I'm finding clients staggering out in the middle of the night, and God knows what happens in that place. I don't know. I don't know about the rest of you. I don't know how I would be happy. Now, today is Saturday. Maybe in my establishment, they do that in the middle of then tomorrow I'm in charge. You understand? You understand? There's a conflict already there. So I would say the best is, if it bothers you, your conscience, and you know it's something you don't want to live with, just leave it. I think God is not short of ways of prospering you. Isn't it? He's not sure. God is not in heaven and saying the only way you can do that is by selling these or no. I think our God is so gracious. I think there are many ways He can actually. In fact, let me put it this way. If I can just put it this way, there's a restaurant in the U.S. that I derive great inspiration from. This restaurant, its foundations, the founders of this particular restaurant were Southern Baptists, very staunch Christians, believers. They love the Lord. So, and it was started, of course, quite a good number. I think a few decades ago. It's called Chick-fil-A. Those of you who have been to the U.S., anybody know Chick-fil-A? So Chick-fil-A is a fast food restaurant, but it is based on Christian principles. So much so that these guys, on Sunday, they don't open Chick-fil-A. None of their, even if you wanted to buy a piece of that franchise in America and you have the capital for it, one of the rules is that on Sundays we shut down. We don't open. Why? Because they believe Sunday is a Sabbath that everybody should go to. Now, if you go to the U.S., one of the things that you will discover, Sunday is big business, especially when it comes to the food industry, because that's when people are at home and people don't cook and what have you. So, in other words, Sunday you can actually make thousands and thousands, but they don't because of their faith. What it shocks you now, of McDonald's, all right? It's also a fast food restaurant, all right? Probably has more franchises probably than even Chick-fil-A, because McDonald's is all over the world. But in terms of revenue, by the way, you can check this out for yourself. In terms of revenue, Chick-fil-A still outdoes McDonald's almost by double. Yet, McDonald's is open on Sundays. Are you with me? Because one thing I learned is this, friends. God honors those who honor Him. Honor Him in your business and say that this business is going to be a blessing. I don't want my business to break homes. I promise you, God will honor your business. Are you with me? People will come with all kinds of ideas. Oh, you need to do this, you need to do that. This is where the money is. But you always have to pray about it and say, Lord, is that where you're leading me? Everybody may be going in one direction, but if He's leading you a different direction, honor Him and watch Him honor your business. Does that make sense? So, that's my answer, I think, where that is concerned, and I think the answer speaks for itself.
Great. All right, I'll allow you to rest because we'll be inviting here in a short while. So the QR code is on the screen, eh? Oh, there's a question at the back. Okay.
Okay. Okay, thank you very much, Reverend. We have learned a lot, but I need some clarification. You have taught us about working with the relatives, and me, I work with the Finsco Africa, and our boss, and unfortunately, my boss is my brother. But when we came to work, we work like a boss. We came borderless, so I would like you to clarify so that we may not have misunderstanding those boundaries and those lining. For the last 5 years, mi nakumbuka alinichukua kama nauza doma. Nilikuwa nachemsha doma, nauza soko, nimefanya biashara mingi za hawking. So alinichukua and I made myself where I am today. Na nimefanya biashara mingi, ameniinua kimaisha. So I would like you to clarify, because I know there are so many people here working with their relatives, so that we can understand much about it. Thank you very much.
You know, I didn't say that it is wrong to work with your relatives. What I said, we prioritize skill. That's what I said. Prioritize skill. So even if you're going to work with your brother, you're going to work with your uncle, whoever, and you need an accountant, I'm not going to employ you just because you're my brother to come and do accounting, which you have no idea about. That's what I meant. All right? So in other words, yes, you can actually, even for me, like for example, my wife, the family that they have is actually a family business. But they're very strict. They say that for any particular, whatever position that needs skill, trained skill, we find the right skill. All right? If a relative, if a brother can be able to fulfill that skill, that's fine. However, all right, there's always a however. Tusizoeane. Umenielewa? As in, let's not take each other for granted. Let's not, in other words, respect the business. So even if I'm working with my brother and I need to come to the office at 8, I'm going to come to the office at 8 because in biashara. Are you with me? Because what usually happens, unfortunately, sometimes, and that's what, now, in fact, they say some of these big companies, like the supermarkets that collapsed. Why? You remember those days of Nakumat? Remember Taskis? Why? Most of them, I don't know all the details, but some of them actually point to the fact of family interference. Right? So then, because, see, my father is the one who owns this thing, so unakuja unasema, I want to buy a new car, see, unaambia accountant, nisabie 5 million. Isn't it? What you don't realize is that when they do that, when they remove that money from the company, that person did not earn that money. That money cannot be accounted. It's as though somebody robbed the business. So you affect the cash flow. So now, because me I've done, my brother will also come and say the same thing. My sister. Then you know what happens? Eventually, the business, because imagine if my father, and I wish I had a father like that, he owns this big establishment, and me, so when I go to the accountant and I tell him, by the way, give me 2 million, atakata. After all, my father is the one who owns this thing. That's what I was just saying. Tuko pamoja, all right? So you work with them, but even if you're going to work with them, let there be those professional boundaries so that whoever is working there, they are remunerated, they are paid for the service that they deliver, and that we don't become too familiar, you know, so that it begins affecting the work in that particular establishment.